Hello and welcome back. Today I'll be going through tutorial 4, which is to be the fourth game out of the Operation Crimson Stone box set. So we'll just quickly go over some new rules, skills and equipment for this tutorial that'll be introduced. So first off, we'll be going through Zone of Control. Now, Zone of Control basically is a representation of the trooper's awareness of their surroundings. And it is defined as an imaginary cylinder with a radius of 8 inches from the outer edge of the trooper's silhouette, extending 8 inches up from the top of the silhouette and 8 inches down from the bottom of the silhouette. So as you can see, the image on the right here demonstrates quite well the description of the zone of control. Now, if you happen to have a miniature that enters, or an enemy miniature that enters the zone of control, or if you choose to enter the zone of control of an enemy miniature, if you're outside of line of fire, the only skills you have available are dodge and reset, unless any special skill arises. Okay, so zone of control, these are the different silhouettes for miniatures in Infinity. Your standard infantry miniatures are Silhouette 2. Silhouette 8 and 7 are your tag miniatures. Silhouette 4 is often the motorcycle miniatures. Silhouette 3 is your attack drones. Silhouette 1 are like your little helper power bots that your engineers and doctors have. Now when it comes to zone of control or any other zone, you'll need to know the definition of what is considered inside. So in the diagram here, if you're technically outside the zone, but you're touching it, silhouette contact to the zone, then you're considered inside the zone. So this miniature can interact with this miniature. Obviously, this miniature is now inside and the other one is totally inside, and this one is considered outside, so it cannot be reacted to or affected by anything that can be done inside zone of control. Okay, one of the new skills that'll be demonstrated this game is forward deployment. And so this is a deployment skill used in the deployment phase, and it is optional. You don't have to do it, but obviously many players will take advantage of any skill to get further up the midfield. So this skill, forward deployment, allows the user of this special skill to be deployed beyond the limit of the deployment zone up to the number of inches that is allocated in their unit profile. So it could be an extra 2 inches, it could be an extra 12 inches. The next skill to be demonstrated in this game will be Infiltration, and similar to forward deployment, however, there's it's a much more advanced version. So it's a deployment skill. You use it during the deployment phase. Now this trooper can be deployed anywhere in your half of the table. So if you play on a traditional 4-foot by 4-foot game table, normally your deployment zone's 1 foot, and then you have another foot that leads up to the center line of the table. Now you can deploy anywhere from your table edge to the center line of that table. So you can still deploy with a deployment zone, but that's not the point of this skill. You're deployed in your half of the midfield. Now, the unique thing about this skill, Infiltration, is that it also allows you to deploy your miniature in your opponent's half of the midfield. So you can do that, but you have to take an infiltration roll, and that is using the miniature's physical attribute with a -3. Now, you cannot deploy inside the enemy deployment zone with Infiltration, but you can deploy into their half of the midfield. So this allows for some unique asymmetrical tactics to come into play when you're playing a game. So the Infiltration roll is quite simple. You make a normal roll using the physical attribute of the miniature, -3, after placing the miniature on the table and any deployable weapons or equipment that they can deploy, such as mines, for example. Now, if you fail the Infiltration roll, then you must place that miniature in your deployment zone in contact with a table edge. So either the back edge or the side edge, that's fine. But that's it's quite a significant punishment. So it's kind of a risky move to deploy in the opponent's half of the midfield. It's much easier just to deploy in your half of the midfield. But if you want to take a risk, because it is a risk-taking game, Infinity, that's the risk you take. You get the if you pass, you get the benefit of being deployed further and causing some, sneaky shenanigans towards your opponent. But if you foul, the punishment is severe, and you're always back in your deployment zone, like the furthest away from where you want to be. As this is just an example of infiltration role, not much different to what I've explained, pretty much. But to do it, the sequence of events essentially is you place your miniature and any deployable mines that you wish to deploy in your opponent's half of the midfield. So you put them down where they are, then you roll for your infiltration roll. If you pass, you can stay there. If you fail, then you put them back in your deployment zone. And obviously you don't deploy the mine in your deployment zone, but the miniature goes back in your deployment zone on the table edge. Okay, game order and sequence, pretty much no change. These were explained in the first two tutorials. The only change I've added is just to make it more clearer. In your order sequence, when your active turn is idle and ballistic skill, or idle and discover, because if you're idle, you're already in a favorable position. You don't want to move, and you cannot do 2 ballistic skill attacks. So normally the result is if you don't want to move but you want to attack, it's idle and ballistic attack. Okay, the army lists for this. These are the rocket profiles. You'll get 3 rockets for this. One has the infiltration skill, which will be demonstrated, and the new miniature for this is the first Highlander SAS, and they have infiltration plus, mimetism -3, surprise attack -3, martial arts level 2, camouflage, and dodge +1 inch. So here's the profile for one rocket. They have a rifle, light shotgun, pistol, and close combat weapon. Now in the actual Crimson Stone list, they don't have the light shotgun, and they have a few other minor changes. However, I'm trying to, teach the N4 rules using the Crimson Stone box set. So the rockets in this tutorial will have the full complement of weapon loadouts, or all miniatures will. Second rocket, same again, rifle, shotgun. Now the infiltrating rocket has a submachine gun instead of a rifle, because obviously infiltration, it means they're going to get closer to the enemy, and so they don't need as successful range band. Essentially, it's all close shot engagements. The HMG for the heavy infantry, devastating piece of equipment. For the Zenit, they have a armor-piercing sniper rifle and a light shotgun. So this weapon covers mid to long ranges, and this is for the close range engagements. For the SAS, they have a boarding shotgun. I know it says multi-sniper rifle here, but that's incorrect. That was a typo in the Crimson Stone box set. But they have a boarding shotgun and a pistol. So that, because they're infiltrating, they're designed for more close quarter engagements, essentially, because they don't need the ranges from a rifle or a HMG. Okay, for the Nomads, here's the addition of the troopers, the Sombra. It's pretty vanilla, the weapon loadout for my army. All Nomads have the same profile, combi rifle, pistol, and close combat weapon. Now the combi rifle is unique because if you remember from the Ariadne profile, they had a rifle and a shotgun, and with a rifle, anything 8 inches or less, they got no modification to the ballistic attribute. And so the shotgun was used for that, to make for that, to fill that gap of weapon availability, weapon efficiency. The combi rifle, the benefit of a combi rifle is that you don't need a rifle and a shotgun. Your combi rifle is designed to engage anything 16 inches or less with a +3 to ballistic skill. So it's one of the unique attributes of a combi rifle compared to a standard rifle. Now the Invader, they have a Spitfire, which is a HMG but designed for short range engagements. So its maximum effective range is 24 inches, and you get the +3. Obviously, 8 inches or less, it's not as effective. So it's more of it's like a HMG but more for, urban fighting. Okay, the intruder has a HMG, pistol, and close combat weapon. And the Sombra has a unique weapon loadout. They have the multi-rifle, which has the same attributes as a combi rifle, 16 or less, you get +3. And for here it says AP ammo, but we're going off the official weapon list, which is AP shock ammo. So you can choose to shoot with either armor-piercing ammunition or shock ammunition. And you also have the anti-material mode, which uses double-action ammunition. So basically, if you use double-action ammunition, it's one shot, but if it's a success and it hits, the opponent has to make 2 saves for their armor roll, not 1. Whereas if you use armor piercing, they just have to minus their armor, their miniature's armor. And if they use shock ammunition, they don't go unconscious. If they take 1 wound, they will go straight into the dead state. So the multi-rifle is quite powerful because it gives your miniature, your trooper, the different options depending on the scenario in terms of what to shoot back with. Now they also have a light shotgun, which is actually very useful. Just a typical light shotgun, nothing fancy, and pistol and close combat weapon. Okay, the game. So this is a very short game. It's a good example of what happens when one person has really unlucky dice rolls and the other person has just average, around about 50-50 good and bad dice rolls. Okay, so to keep in touch with the narrative aspect of the game, this is tutorial 4, which is where the Ariadne troops are meant to sneak on board a prospecting ship, a mining ship called the Picapedrius, I think that's how I said it, Picapedrius, and extract the information of the Crimson Stone. Now the Crimson Stone is a code name that the Ariadnes used for their mission in this, which is a asteroid that has a high level of rare metals and is very valuable for Ariadne. So with this, obviously this is just the buildings in the terrain pack that comes with Crimson Stone, but we decided to play this as an internal area of a spaceship. So the walls essentially are infinite height, which means that you cannot shoot from the outside in or from the inside out. You can shoot, up and down these stairs because they're, entranceways into the spaceship, but otherwise it's meant to be internal space of the spaceship. And we've put this console in the middle here because that's the objective for Ariadne, is to extract the data information from the spaceship and to get it back to their deployment zone. Okay, the initiative roll. Whip 13 is an attribute for both the lieutenants. We both succeed, however my opponent wins on an 11, I win on a 6. So because my opponent is higher, they win. Now to keep in touch with the narrative, my opponent chooses to keep deployment and deploy second. I choose to keep initiative, and to keep in touch with the narrative aspect that Ariadne has the advantage in this tutorial or scenario, I will go second because they're meant to be going first. So during deployment, I'll deploy my Aguaseals here, here, and here, my Intruder in camo marker state here, and my Sombra here. Now, as you can see, my Sombra is outside my deployment zone of 8 inches. This is a center line of 8 inches, and I've deployed it as close as I can. So that's my forward deployment. I can deploy up to 8 inches. Now my opponent deploys a rocket here, here, and here. Now this is their infiltrating rocket. Now obviously there's not much cover here, so they deploy forward of their deployment zone here. Now this is the SAS trooper using the infiltration skill. Get right up and close near the entrance because they plan to sneak up that doorway there. And they deploy their heavy infantry up here to cover down here. Now I'll keep one trooper in reserve, which was my evader, so I'll deploy them up here because they've got their heavy infantry here. I thought I'm going to have a HI shootout, and if need be. And my opponent deploys their Zenit 7 at the bottom here to help cover this approach. So my plan here is If the SAS moves up, because I'll be in zone of control, because of my forward deployment skill, that puts me inside their zone of control, my ARO will be dodge, and I plan to dodge 2 inches forward and follow them up the stairs and engage them within the building and prevent them from hacking the terminal. That was my plan. All else fails, to run up the heavy infantry up these stairs and to defend it and prevent anything happening. Okay, here's a photo of my deployment zone and my opponent's deployment zone. Round 1. Okay, 6 miniatures on the table, 6 orders. One of them's a lieutenant, they get a lieutenant order, so 7 orders in total. The first order is activating this miniature down the bottom right here, the infiltrating rocket. They choose to discover, I choose to dodge, and they choose to shoot. So they choose to discover my Sombra. Now, in order to shoot my Sombra, you have to discover it first. Now, because they have nothing like a multispectral visor or anything special, they have to discover first, and if they succeed to discover, then they do a ballistic attack. I chose to dodge because even if the success is successful or not, I want to be able to move back behind cover so I can be safe from any further attacks, because I thought, okay, if this is going to be happening, my opponent may want to clear this path first before moving up, so I want to give myself the opportunity to hide back and prevent myself from being discovered and shot at for any further, for the remainder of my opponent's turn. So it's a face-to-face roll. I'm not sure if after a face-to-face roll for Discover it would be a attack, but I chose to do a face-to-face for Discover. Because they're within 8 inches, they get +3 to their Discover roll, but because I'm also in cover, they get -3. Now, because I have mimetism at -3, it also makes it harder for them to discover me. So my opponent has to do get a success value of 10 or less to discover me and reveal my miniature. For me, I dodge on my physical, and it's just a flat 11. So we roll, I fail, my opponent succeeds, and my miniature is revealed, and it was a Sombra. So I replace the camo token with the actual miniature. Now they do a ballistic attack. +3 because they're in range, because they've got the submachine gun. -3 for cover, -3 for mimetism, because, you know, I'm harder to hit. They need 7s or less. Very lucky for my opponent, everything is 7 or less, and in a nice order of 6, 5, and 4. So I take 3 hits, so that means I have to take 3 armor saves. So I roll 3 dice. The damage of my opponent's weapon is 13, plus my armor of 3, my cover of 3. Obviously 13 is the same as damage, which is equal to or less than, so that's an automatic wound. And I just calculated these and realized, and I knew straight away I was going to be less than 13, but it's 12 and 9 respectively. So I take 3 wounds and my miniature goes into the dead state. So I remove it from play. Opponent's next order, they declare move and the camo token moves up. So there goes my plan. They take out the Sombra and then move up their SAS into the spaceship. I choose to discover with my intruder because I get to see them coming around the corner. And I thought at least if I could discover them, it'd be easier to shoot them next time. And they move up further in. So from here, I just do a whip roll. Now, because they're outside of 8 inches, I don't get a plus bonus to discover. Now, because they have mimetism, it's negated because the intruder has a multispectral visor level 2, which is demonstrated in this tutorial, not the last one, which was meant to demonstrate this. And so I don't have to apply the -3 for mimetism for my opponent's miniature. So I just get to roll on a flat 14. And I get a 17, which means I'm higher, so I fail. But because I perform the action, I am now revealed. Now, I'm not too sure if, because Discover is a short movement skill, I don't know if it has to reveal me or not. I know if I do a ballistic skill or close combat attack or hack a console, I do reveal my miniature, so I just need to clarify whether performing Discover reveals me or not. I don't think so. but I'll clarify that and I'll put it in the comments below. Okay, another order, my opponent chooses move, and they have to be in base contact to hack the console, but you don't have to stay there. Like, your movement is up to 4 inches, so you can choose to move 1 inch into contact and then 3 inches away. I can't do any AROs because they're outside of line of fire and outside zone of control, and they choose to hack the console. So it's a whip 13, flat roll, they get a 10, and they get a supply box to go with it, and that's to represent the the USB or whatever they use in the future, USB stick to download the information on. And now they've got to get that to their deployment edge to succeed. Next order, move again. They choose to move within 4 inches, not the full 4 inches, just down to the stairwell there near the opening, but also outside of line of fire. And because of that, I cannot do an ARO, and they're also outside my zone of control. So they just perform an idle. Next order, choose move again, and they move the Zenit 7 in the marker, or so they move the camo marker. I know what it is, but they move the camo marker in behind cover. And I'm thinking, why go backwards? And I choose to hold because I think what's going to happen next. I'm not sure what my opponent's plan was. They choose a ballistic attack. I thought, okay, I'll choose dodge. And by declaring a ballistic attack, their miniatures revealed it was a sniper. So I realized that moving back, they wanted to be in more favorable range bands. So it's 23 inches between the two miniatures. This is the data for my opponent, who needs to get 9 or less. Now they are in good range, however, cover and I have mimetism, means that my opponent needs 9 or less to succeed. I just need 12 or less to succeed. If they get two dice, I roll 1 because the sniper rifle fires twice. I fail on a 19, my opponent succeeds and gets less than 9 with a 5 and a 3. Now the damage of the sniper rifle is 15. Now my opponent gets a special skill, which is +1 to damage, and that's to all weapons, not just the sniper rifle, but to the shotgun and the pistol. Not the close combat weapon, because that goes off physical, I do believe. So the damage I have to roll against is 16. So I have to get, if I get 16 or less, I take a wound. So I have to get 17 or higher. So I roll 2 dice because I took 2 hits, 9 and 11, plus my armor of 2, my cover of 3, gives me 14 and 9 respectively, well below 16. So I take 2 wounds and go to the dead state and remove my miniature. And final order, pretty much opponent moves a camo token out. I cannot do anything, and they move again and move further closer to the table edge, which puts them in a favorable position. And now my opponent uses a lieutenant order, so they declare short movement skill and move up. I still cannot do anything because it's outside of line of sight, and they just move up, tuck in against the wall. So here my plan was, okay, I now know that's the lieutenant, and obviously that's SAS, and they're almost going to be there. So I had a couple of options. The option I was thinking of was either pushing forward and taking out the lieutenant and making all these orders irregular so they can only spend the order on themselves, or to push around and to take the best opportunity I can to take a shot at this sniper. So I eventually end up choosing to run down here, but you'll see how that plays out next turn. Okay, my turn. Sorry, yeah, my turn. Because I've lost 2 miniatures, I've only got 4 troopers on the table. That means 4 orders, and one of them is my lieutenant, which is this one here, tucked safely out of any line of fire. Okay, so first things first, I wanted to take out this heavy infantry with HMG because that's the biggest threat. So I declare move, and I decide to go prone with this miniature because I'm kind of exposed. I mean, I'm behind cover, but I'm also in line of fire. And they declare ballistic attack with the heavy infantry,
and I choose ballistic attack back as well. Now, even though I've gone prone, I've gone from standing to lying down, so I choose to nominate to shoot in the standing position, which is where my opponent also chooses to shoot, because when I'm prone, I cannot be seen, and I cannot see my opponent. So it makes sense. You take a pot shot, then get down, essentially. So the range between us is 23 inches. Now that puts me outside my favourable zone for my combi rifle, and so I need to get 5 or less to win. And my opponent needs to get just a flat roll of 12 to succeed. Roll the dice, I get 3, they get 1. All my dice miss. My opponent dice hits. So I have to roll 1 armor save. The damage of the HMG is 15. I get a 17, I succeed. Thank goodness. Now, normally you'd do a guts roll, but because my movement ended up being in prone, I'm already in total cover. There's no point in me moving, so I just nominate to stay there. Next order, I thought, okay, I failed that. I'm going to risk it. I'm going to get my evader to come running out here, and I have enough orders. 1 order to here, another order to here, another order to here, and then to take that out. That's the plan. It doesn't work like that, as you'll see. I declare move. I start running. Well, I move up to 4 inches. My opponent declares BS attack. Now I choose dodge. Why I choose dodge? Well, if I choose movement, I get to move a further 4 inches. However, my opponent would make a normal attack roll and cannot be counted. So if they succeed, I'd take a hit. So I chose dodge. Now choosing dodge means I only get to move a total of 2 inches. However, if my dodge succeeds and is higher than the BS attack, it negates the BS attack, so I'm still alive to continue pushing around. That's why I've chosen dodge. Range is 21 inches between the miniatures. I just have to roll 12 to succeed, 12 or less. My opponent, because I'm out of cover, I don't get a cover modifier, so they get +3 because I'm in their optimal range band for the HMG. They need 15 or less. So we roll, and we both fail. I get a 19, my opponent gets an 18. I fail my dodge, their hit misses, so nothing happens. And I'm sort of thinking to myself, this is not good. Why? Because I'm still in the open in line of fire for my next order. So I declare move. Opponent move again up to 4 inches. My opponent declares ballistic attack. I move again up to a total of 8 inches. And the reason why I did this is because I thought, well, if they failed the first time, maybe they'll fail the second. Maybe I'll get lucky. And that's the success value. They need a 15. Now I cannot counter this because I'm choosing not to dodge. I'm just moving. And they roll a 3. They hit. And now I'm thinking, please let me pass my armor roll. Damage with HMG is 15. High roll dismally on a 2. Plus my armor of 3 gives me a success value of 5, and which is significantly less than 15, so I take a wound and go unconscious. So that plan failed. So I think, what do I do now? Well, the chances of trying to prevent my opponent from getting the supply box to the edge of the table is quite low because I'm, pretty much on the other side. I have to go around the spaceship to get them, and I do not have enough orders to do so. And if I move my lieutenant through up here, I'm going to be taken out here. And if I move up through here, I'll be taken out here. Even if I want to go through the middle of the building, I just do not have enough orders. And I thought, you know what, try and save my dignity and take out the enemy. So I spent another order, declare move, decide to go stand up and move up to cover and get closer, hopefully to be more favorable range bands. My opponent decides to shoot back with their heavy infantry, and I shoot back as well. Now we shoot back from here because it turns out it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm out of line of sight here. I'm actually in line of sight here, but my opponent chooses to shoot me when I'm out in the open, and there's not much difference here. It turns out I'm outside my favorable range bands. So I need 5 or less to succeed. My opponent needs 15 or less. And as you can see, none of my rolls hit. my opponent does. Once again, damage 15. I roll a 14. I think, yes, this is good. Plus my armor, and then I realize I was out in the open. I don't get the +3 cover. So the total ends up being 15, and because it's the same as the damage, I take a wound. And that is the end of my round 1. Now round 2, short and sharp this one. So once again, my opponent has 6 miniatures on the table and they have 6 orders. And they declare first order, move the miniature or the camo token into contact with the table edge with the supply box. I cannot do anything because everything's outside of zone of control or line of fire, and they declare an idle. Why? Because that's the end of the game. Mission success for Ariadna. So the game mechanics demonstrated in this game, forward deployment, because I deployed my Sombra within 8 inches of my half of the midfield. Infiltration, my opponent got to deploy their rocket with infiltration and their SAS within their half of the deployment zone to make it much more favorable for them. And we also got to see the multispectral visor being used for discover efficiently, but obviously unsuccessfully. So that is the end of tutorial 4. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a very short game. It was a very brutal game. As you can see, I've only made one positive successful roll. The rest were all fails. And this can just show how brutal Infinity can be. You know, if you're having a really unlucky day, no matter how good your tactical plan is, no matter how good you understand your miniatures and weapon zones, you can just fail quite easily. And as you notice, my opponent just had average rolls. Not all of them were successful. They did fail some. So it's, like I said, some days if you're playing against an opponent who's evenly matched, it can come down, success or failure can come down just to luck of the dice. So I hope you enjoy that. Thank you very much, and have a good day.